Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Daredevil Born Again Episode 1 and Episode 2 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references. I know there's a bunch of questions about the other Marvel Netflix Defenders. There were a lot of references to them in the first couple episodes, including a lot of Punisher references too, because he is a huge character during the series. We will be on Defenders Watch all season, picking over these episodes with a fine-tooth comb, looking for cameo scenes. If you're brand new to the channel, I'll be doing videos for all the episodes, just like I did back in the day for the original Netflix series. The episode 1 title was Heaven's Half Hour, which is a reference to a concept of a pause in divine action to emphasize the gravity of what is about to happen, which is Foggy's death, and Kingpin becoming mayor is sort of the inciting events for what sets off the series. They use the newer version of the glitching CRT old school style Marvel television logo for actual television series, sort of playing with the actual titles themselves, but not in the same way they do during the Agatha series or like WandaVision, where it's a different type of title every single time. There is a lot of creative use of camera angles and the way they show the shutters of the camera during the actual episode, but it's not quite as crazy as they get with that kind of stuff, or quite as meta as they do during Agatha. Like, it's not a series that's meant to be meta in the way that Agatha or WandaVision was. Just like the original Daredevil Netflix series, the other Defender series, it's meant to be a new return to ground-level Marvel stuff in the MCU. Kingpin, for example, they're setting up as sort of like a ground-level Thanos for all these types of heroes that don't have crazy levels of superpowers. But because we are in the MCU now, in this era of Daredevil, like he is born again inside the MCU, we have a lot of connections to the other Marvel characters, series, the other Marvel movies that we didn't have as much of during the Netflix era. For instance, one of the biggest examples of that is Kingpin referencing Spider-Man during the episodes. Like, Spider-Man is active in New York City, being a vigilante according to Kingpin, even though technically he's a hero helping people. Being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man while all this is going on during the events of Episode 1 and Episode 2. Don't worry, we will unpack the timeline because they do jump around in the timeline a lot during the first couple episodes. There's a very haunting song to open the series to, which does not bode well. Obviously, that's all foreshadowing for what happens to Foggy at the end of the episode. R.I.P. to poor Foggy. They try to reference it a couple times in both of the episodes, the fact that he is supposed to be permadead, or they want you to think that he is permadead. We will get to that too, because a lot of what they're doing on the series is based on a couple different Daredevil comic book arcs. Generally, they're adapting parts of the run where Kingpin became mayor and the Muse arc, because Muse is meant to be the actual main villain of the season, but we just barely met him at the end of these first 2 episodes. Even though ultimately Kingpin will be the big bad of any big Daredevil series, just not at first here during this first season. Then during the opening scene, they do a bit of a WandaVision or Agatha All Along style trick where they shift the aspect ratios in the camera, but the way they do it is a little less meta, but it's the frame opening as if they're opening the curtain on Daredevil Born Again, like they're opening the curtain at a theater. They're meant to open the episode on different shots of Hell's Kitchen because this is meant to take place a year ago from present day in the MCU. One of the funnier things, too, is that if you've never been to New York City, Hell's Kitchen is a relatively small area. We see the Nelson Murdoch and Page law firm that they tease forming at the end of Season 3, and a little bit of time has gone by since the end of Season 3, like we've had the events of Avengers Infinity War, Thanos' snap, then Avengers Endgame, the Hulk snap, which they call the blip, which was everybody coming back.
Dark times indeed.
So all that's gone down, like we had the Echo flashbacks, that was during the 5-year time jump, Kingpin getting shot by Echo, then going during the Echo series, deciding to be mayor, and coming back right after that. That took place like right before this takes place, this scene here. Matt mentions Becky's Diner, which they featured during the Netflix series, also to set up the Kingpin reference later where they both wax about the Manhattan Diner and missing Becky's because neither of them had been back to Hell's Kitchen in about a year since Foggy's death. These dark times that Foggy mentions is also a reference back to Avengers Infinity War, the snap, the 5-year time jump, like the dark times that had been all over the earth recently. Also a bit of foreshadowing for what's to come at the end of the episode too, like there's a lot of foreshadowing going on. He mentions Cherry retiring. He was a detective in the NYPD during the Netflix series and winds up becoming a PI for Matt at his new law firm, just like Jessica Jones. Like, he basically like another version of Jessica Jones that he uses. Don't worry, she's supposed to be back during Season 2. Maybe we'll get some references to her or some more references to her because they do actually have a couple of Jessica Jones references in these episodes, but they're real subtle. They say 30% of the police force is leaving right now, setting up the idea the Kingpin is going to have to replace the lost numbers eventually. They also reference that in the future after that time jump too. So the whole idea is that the cops are underserviced and the vigilantes around the city, basically like the heroes running around in costumes like Spider-Man, for example, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, are picking up the slack. Him making the joke about the city protecting itself without the police is a reference to that and to him being Daredevil because both of them now know his secret. They go to Josie's for drinks with a whole bunch of people like it's a big celebration they're having. Matt and Karen joke about hooking up again to remind you that they're not a couple right now, but they trying to be legit while they're working at the law firm together, like not mixing business and pleasure. But they are still giving off a super horny vibe for each other, like they're still into each other at this point before the tragedy. This person Foggy is trying to spit some game at is Kirsten McDuffie. She's currently the district attorney, and she winds up becoming a lawyer with Matt when they form a new firm together. He mentions Jerry Hogarth's law firm that he used to work at. She's a Jessica Jones character who popped up on the other series. One of the few sly Jessica Jones references. There might be some bigger ones later in the season, though. The way the showrunners explained what was going on here in the first couple minutes before things go totally wrong is that they wanted to show you a brief dream that a bunch of friends shared with each other, like a really happy moment in time and space that was then ended with this tragedy. So for like a hot minute, they got to enjoy their dream together. Cherry mentions Daredevil and White Tiger, and on the news we see footage of White Tiger stopping robbers. He's meant to be the Hector Ayala version of the character, and there are a couple points in episode 2 where they do reference his amulet actually having mystical powers, which is right out of the comics, basically giving him all of his comic book powers. Even though the series is meant to be very ground level, it's trying to take a very ground level approach to the way it explains magic. The regular people in the MCU, just like people walking around, know about Thanos, they know what happened during the Battle of Avengers Endgame, they know about all the Avengers secrets, the stuff they did, the time travel they did. And regular people in the MCU also know that magic is a real thing that exists, so the idea that somebody's walking around with a magical amulet that gives them powers isn't that weird of a thing to have in the MCU. When they talk about vigilantes being both good and bad, this is meant to set up Kingpin's whole anti-vigilante campaign, that arc during the series. It's a big part of the series. You basically see it by the events of episode 2, where Kingpin starts referring to all the heroes as dangerous vigilantes, like, I've been the victim of vigilante justice, vigilante violence myself. I was shot by one. What does that remind you of in real life? Like, this just feels very apropos. They wrote these episodes long before Trump was actually shot by that dude. So it is a crazy coincidence. But this is also part of the whole Kingpin mayor arc in the comics too. That's how he ran for mayor in the comics on an anti-vigilante campaign. The whole idea is that he wanted to use the police to basically get rid of all the heroes like Spider-Man and Daredevil, and now he's doing that again too. He literally references it in one of his first addresses to the populace of New York City after becoming mayor.
Or a man who dresses in a spider outfit.
Basically Fisk declaring open season on all the heroes in New York City. Josie's toast, "For the devil knows you're dead," is both a religious saying in the context that she's using it, but also foreshadowing for the Bullseye fight shortly. Matt uses his radar sense to listen to Foggy's conversation with his client that winds up being an attack from Bullseye in Foggy's apartment, who's actually trying to find out where Foggy Nelson and Karen Page are, like he came to Foggy's apartment expecting to find Foggy, but found the guy that he stashed there. Basically, Bullseye coming back to finish what he started trying to do during Daredevil Season 3, kill Karen Page and also Foggy Nelson. They reveal him in the glove with the Bullseye logo on it. We are getting slowly more comic book accurate with the costumes. Matt goes into full Daredevil mode. We get a whole bunch of scenes of him being super acrobatic. This is where they show off a lot of the Disney money that Marvel has now. Like, here's the movie level money that we have to make Daredevil look more like comic book Daredevil when he's doing his fights. One of the big issues with the Netflix series is they had way lower budgets, so they couldn't do quite as much Daredevil comic book stuff as they wanted to do. They basically use this opening scene of him in Daredevil form to show you that money. Like, this is where the money goes to all these crazy scenes. So we get him swinging around the rooftops, Daredevil style, even though it does kind of remind you of Spider-Man web slinging around. Daredevil then hears Bullseye's gun and realizes it's him. He shoots Foggy, man down, gets him in the heart, which is bad news. Then comes for Karen Page, Daredevil swinging him and knocking him through the window just before he can fire his gun. Then the way they filmed this scene, they want to make it feel like an epic oneer, like the Daredevil hallway scenes that we talk about in each season of Daredevil. They try to make this feel like a hallway scene, but they fight their way through the bar and up the stairs to the roof instead. That's the hallway fight. Notice how Daredevil just opens up on him too, especially in the bar here, like he throws a whole bunch of knives into him, so by the end of the fight, Daredevil has all kinds of knives sticking out all over his body and it doesn't even slow him down. And while the fight is going on, one of the other most iconic things that they do here, really cool stylistically, is that you're hearing it from Matt's perspective and you're hearing him listen to Foggy's heartbeat slow down and eventually stop. Love the way they show him swinging from above too and wailing on him like he just frees the beast on Bullseye up on the rooftop. Totally unleashed, like this is the Punisher version of Daredevil, and it's sort of a fulfillment of what Punisher told him way back in Daredevil Season 2, you're just one bad day away from being me, and he kind of is being Punisher right now. He throws Bullseye off the roof in a rage, later admitting to trying to kill him, even though he isn't dead, like he survives. But they really, really want you to think that Foggy is dead. Like you listen to the heartbeats slowly stop, like you don't hear the heartbeats anymore, and you see the camera linger on his still body here for a weirdly long time. Like, look at this person, he is definitely dead. We're showing you the body because we want you to think that he's dead. Later, there are several more references to Foggy's funeral, to his death just in general, like they really, really want to remind you that he's supposed to be dead. So we will see if they're trying to trick us or pull a fast one or like a Jon Snow situation on us. Technically, Jon Snow did die, but then was able to come back to life. We will see there's some crazy resurrection stuff going on during these episodes.
Okay, to be clear, we've now used the word resurrected 3 times.
Matt then takes his mask off and throws it off of the roof, basically because he feels like he crossed the line and he lost the right to call himself a hero or be a vigilante or be a hero. So this winds up being the last time that he wore the costume until maybe like episode 3, 4. We'll see which episode he actually puts the costume back on. Eventually he will put it back on during these episodes. But he does get found out by Cherry, who goes to the rooftop and sees him without his mask on, but later winds up being his PI, so he's kind of in on Team Daredevil, even though technically he's not Daredevil anymore. Like, he's in on the secret. Then they transition to the opening titles with his mask falling to the ground, and this is also meant to be the newer red suit if you weren't clear too. Remember during the She-Hulk episodes, he teased getting a whole bunch of new costumes? We saw those during the trailer, and this red one is one of those. You can also see the old Netflix red costume in this lineup of costumes too, so they're trying to remind you that this is meant to be canon to the Netflix series, like everything from the Netflix era is still canon now. Here's the thing though, for everybody that was asking for them to keep the opening theme music for Daredevil because it goes so hard, it has one of the best theme songs of all the Marvel series, or even some of the movies too. They did make new opening titles and they remixed a version of the original theme music, but it is basically the original theme music that they just brought back. They kind of did the same thing for X-Men 97, where it is the original X-Men the Animated Series theme song, but it's like a slightly newer version of that. Unpacking all the metaphors and the meaning from the actual opening titles to the statues, the city crumbling, also meant to be a metaphor for their world being destroyed metaphorically and literally because of Foggy dying, it breaking up the band, so to speak. Then Infinity War, the snap happening, like literally the city itself crumbling under the weight of all the disasters that have been going around the MCU. Then we see Daredevil being reborn out of the ashes in the costume as a metaphor for the title of the series, Daredevil Born Again, because he is being born again, so to speak, in the MCU. Like, hey, brand new series, we're uncanceling Daredevil. It's kind of like Daredevil Season 4. But also in the context of the episodes, like we've seen the first couple episodes, episode 3, episode 4, we'll see the rebirth of Daredevil. Like, he will have to put the costume back on and be reborn as like a new iteration of the character, metaphorically. A new kind of Daredevil hero. Then the actual logo for the series is a red sky. You can see the clouds over New York City in the skyline at the bottom too. The title actually goes pretty hard. I'm glad that they did this instead of trying to make it look way simpler. Definitely a nice intro just in general, but I still like the original Netflix intro better. Couple of important credits here too. Dario here was the producer on the original Punisher Netflix series. Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson are also from the Loki series too. So Kevin Feige and Marvel basically got some of the best visual people from Loki to make the visuals on Daredevil amazing, and some of the best writers and producers too from the original Netflix series. I'm not going to get too deep into it during this video, but I've talked about it in previous videos where they basically rebooted the reboot of the show. So like they basically fired a bunch of previous creatives who were working on the show and then brought on these original Netflix people and the Loki people to basically fix that and make a better show. Then they pick up after a time jump. 1 year later, Daredevil is now living in a Manhattan high-rise, working as a lawyer only with Kirsten, no Daredevil work, making a ton more money, being way more successful because he was always a really good lawyer, to make that joke again. He just spent most of his time being Daredevil, so he wasn't nearly as career-driven, and now all of his attention is just spent on his career. Definitely looks as unhappy as you could possibly be, like this is the saddest man in existence right now. We get some more teasers for Wilson Fisk running for mayor. So remember, this is meant to be after the events of Echo, Spider-Man No Way Home. A lot of Matt's morning routine with the suits in his breakfast, also meant to mirror Kingpin's morning routine we saw during the original Netflix series, and like literally right after this scene. Like we go from Matt's morning routine to Kingpin's new morning routine. Just because the two of them are meant to be so connected, they're on sort of like parallel arcs these first couple episodes. When the news mentions all the provocative murals that are popping up all over the city, that's from the Muse villain. We get a teaser for that later in the episodes, but like just a brief teaser. We see Matt's been keeping a flyer from Foggy's funeral in his pocket every day, so they really want you to think that he is permadead. Like, still got it a year later, still thinking about his funeral, probably saw the body at that funeral. Then we jump to Kingpin doing his version of this morning routine again, but like we've already done this during the Netflix series, so you kind of remember the vibe. The vibe is meant to be very similar, but the big twist on that is that they start with the inverted camera. The reason why they do that is because he's trying to go legit now, so it's sort of like the reverse of Kingpin, like he's a good person now, but we'll see how long that sticks, because there are a couple moments, even in episode 2, where he goes full Kingpin again, threatening people. All these different colored suits too also feel like a metaphor to his alignment, like gray for neutral now because he's running for mayor, but he's not totally good, he's not totally evil anymore. Then we find out what's happened to Vanessa since the last time we saw her during Daredevil Season 3. She's holding court over his empire amongst all the paintings, because remember, she was an art dealer, she does have great taste. All the subject matter of her paintings too just make it feel like she is the most upgraded, badass version of her character that she could possibly be, which they do reference in later episodes. Like, she feels like she's gotten a big upgrade in life just in general, like she's doing amazing and she doesn't need Kingpin anymore because she's doing a better job running his criminal empire than he ever did, apparently making way more money for everybody. And she seems like she's really liking it. There's a reference to one of the dudes joining the Tracksuit Bros Mafia, which we saw Kingpin controlling during the Hawkeye series. Trust a bro. Vanessa in the white also feels like a comp to Kingpin in his white suit during Daredevil Season 3. Like, she has gone full Kingpin, which she has done previously in the comics too. Typically when Kingpin either goes to jail or he has to go into hiding, Vanessa will take over for him. They refer to her as Mrs. Fisk because she and Kingpin were married during Season 3 before he was arrested. Then he shows up surprising her, and if it wasn't clear, this is meant to be the first time that they've met since he was shot by Echo and basically took off to recover, quote unquote. There's a lot of questions about this, I'm sure, like a lot of missing time in Kingpin's timeline. The way they explain it is that he's shot by Echo at the end of the Hawkeye series, goes into recovery, and Vanessa stays with him for a little while, but then eventually he just completely bails and goes into hiding, and that's, I think, where he gets his prosthetics, like the special eye, and the reason why it doesn't look like his eye is messed up at all now. Like, did his eye get fixed? What happened to his eye from Echo? Basically, this is the way they're kind of hand-waving over that, saying that he just went into hiding and had it fixed while he was in hiding. But while he was doing that, he never talked to Vanessa or told her where he was, so she explained during this time gap that's when she took over his criminal empire and apparently took a lover, too. We will see how long it takes Kingpin to kill that dude. But that's why you're getting the hostility from her when he shows up, like, oh, you're showing up now, why didn't you send me any letters, like, why didn't you try to communicate with me what was going on, do you care about me at all? So their relationship is meant to be on the rocks, basically, and it's kind of a similar thing with Matt and Karen after the time jump too, where she's gone to San Francisco. He basically explains to Vanessa how he wants to become mayor and has this grand mission, how he can't be part of his criminal empire, and sort of this weird relationship between the two of them going forward where they kind of understand each other, but Vanessa still isn't really hot on him, like she still kind of hates him right now. Kingpin, though, is basically trying to sever all ties, or at least all visible ties, with his criminal empire.
And anything I was involved with could never be perceived as illegal.
Then we get the first of many little news broadcasts from what seems like Ben Urich's niece filming documentaries. Maybe it's like a video vlog just on crime in the city, things that are happening around the city. Basically, she's filling that role that he filled during the original Netflix series, and they're calling her BB. All the people she talks to the first time mention being more afraid because Daredevil's been gone for a year now. Crime has gotten so much more worse. There's also references later to like the police being understaffed, being underappreciated, and just generally like a lot of stuff that's going on in the city around the city. We learn about the new law firm he formed with Kristen McDuffie. He says he hasn't heard from Karen Page recently, and they're dealing with Bullseye's appeal to try and avoid jail time in the death sentence this episode. For those of you wondering, I don't think that Bullseye remembers that Matt is Daredevil. I think that just kind of escapes him, otherwise he would shout it out loud in the trial here. We see Karen Page come back, and then Daredevil starts making a whole bunch of references to punishment. Lots of punishment references in the first couple episodes, setting up for the Punisher to come back. Pretty much any time anybody in any of the first two episodes mentioned the word punishing, punish, punishment, I was just pointing at the screen like, yep, he's coming soon. Bullseye winds up getting the life sentence in prison, but he's supposed to be back later this season. I think he's going to be in 2 more episodes. He might be back in season 2 as well, too. Matt and Karen reunite for the first time in the past year, also reminiscent of them reconnecting at the beginning of Defenders after they had been on the outs and hadn't been talking for a while. Even though she's off in San Francisco now, I think she's supposed to be in at least 2 more episodes, so like this is not the end that you've seen of Karen Page this season. Interestingly, she seems like she disagrees with Matt and thinks that he should still be Daredevil, like he shouldn't have put the mask down. She gives him back one of his horns from the cowl. I think it's meant to parallel Kingpin's storyline, who's also eventually supposed to wind up with one of the horns, or it might be the one that he has here. At some point, I think that Kingpin gets one of his horns. Then he hears Kingpin campaigning on his anti-vigilante campaign, and they start that whole arc. This person is Buck Cashman. He's meant to be like the new version of Wesley, and a lot of you will recognize Michael Gandolfini, James Gandolfini's son, who's Kingpin's protege, who seems like a good kid who's just going to get swept up in Kingpin's criminal life as a result of being in his orbit. Sort of like he winds up on a Wesley type of arc, and it becomes this tragic downfall of his character. Usually really nice characters like his wind up getting killed. They wind up being collateral damage in big fights like this. There are a couple of funny moments with the way they introduce him too. Like he's meant to be like the Gen Z person on his team. He tries to explain memes to Kingpin. Imagine that, explaining memes to the Kingpin of crime. This whole Fisk can fix it slogan also feels like a Joe the Plumber type of reference. And it kind of seems like Kingpin thinks of him as a younger version of himself. Like, you got a lot of spunk in you, kid. I really like that energy. When Kirsten mentions Matt's meeting with Heather Glenn, she actually winds up being Kingpin and Vanessa's counselor, so the 3 of them have this weird 3-way connection going on between them, which feels very apropos of Kingpin and Daredevil. They reveal that Kirsten sent them up on a date without telling either one of them, and she basically becomes his new love interest for this part of the series. There's a couple references to her being from Queens, and I think they're making some sly Spider-Man No Way Home references, just a callback to that movie when he helped him, like, oh, you've been to Queens before. Yep, been to Queens. When he says he went to the Xavier School, that's not meant to be a reference to X-Men or Professor X. Xavier's an actual school in real life that he did go to during the original Netflix series. We find out that Matt has had Cherry looking into Fisk, trying to see if he's doing anything shady, suss him out. Fisk calls his wife an investment sorceress, more magical references, like actual magic.
Investment sorceress.
We get another BB report on his campaign. The rumor about him crushing a guy's skull is a callback to season 1 with the Russian. It was a brutal scene, like it was hardcore. When Fisk mentions that cops in Josie's were killed by a vigilante, he's actually referring to Bullseye. He's using Bullseye as an example of a dangerous vigilante as part of this campaign. When he says he's endured vigilante violence before, he's also referencing both Daredevil and Echo. Like he says he was shot by a vigilante. That's a nod to Echo from the Hawkeye series, when she literally did that. He mentions the registering of vigilantes also feels like a reference to comic book Marvel Civil War and the Superhero Registration Act. He and Matt have their reunion, and it's a little bit like that scene from Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro meeting in the diner. When he says he's lost weight and gained muscle, also meant to be part of Kingpin's character arc, Vincent D'Onofrio said that by the end of this arc, he will be way heavier, way more like classic Kingpin. Probably because he will slowly descend back leaning into Kingpin mode, like he will go back into Kingpin of Crime mode. There's a whole lot of wordplay here to fighting metaphors, to vigilantes, to Daredevil, everything that happened during the Netflix series with them fighting each other. When he says he tried to mentor someone before, that was Echo, did not end well for him, Daredevil then makes fun of him being shot in the eye, like, didn't she try to shoot you? But the idea is that both of them try to come to an understanding here, a bit of a truce, like, you don't become Daredevil again, and I won't become Kingpin again, otherwise, it's on, we will throw hands. Also basically setting out the idea that Fisk has declared open season on all vigilantes, which we start to see happening with some of the cops. He goes on the date with Heather Glenn, they make another punishing reference, and then he clocks the Kingpin has won the election. Doesn't tell her the whole story, but mentions that they have history. So remember, Heather Glenn becomes their counselor, and she goes into these sessions knowing that her boyfriend, Matt, has history with Kingpin, but she can't really say anything about it because of patient confidentiality. When we see that shot of Vanessa looking at Kingpin after he wins, it seems like she's looking at this as an opportunity for her criminal organization, technically hers now, but also his organization, and it seems like he's going to be pulled back into the life, like Godfather 3 style, like they pull me back in. As I mentioned earlier, she cops to having an affair with someone named Adam, then makes Kingpin promise not to kill him. We will see how long he's good on that before he decides to kill that dude. Probably not that long. Then in the background of the episode, at the very end here before the credits, we see Muse starting to draw another mural of Kingpin himself. This is meant to be the Muse character, and this is a scene right out of the comics. Episode 2 is titled Optics, which is a reference to Kingpin's optics to the public in his relationship with his wife. Basically the idea that the older voters in the city want to see his wife have a stable relationship with him, as opposed to the younger voters who don't really care about that kind of thing. We start the episode with Kingpin in his first day in office giving an address. There are a crazy number of Easter eggs here in Times Square when he's talking. There's a Luke Cage reference to Harlem's Paradise, just reminding you that we'll see Luke Cage again eventually. There's the Pingo Doce soda from Incredible Hulk that just showed up during Deadpool and Wolverine in the Void. Don't know why they keep bringing this soda back, but it's probably just like the Coca-Cola of the Marvel Universe, like it's just everywhere. Anybody could potentially turn into a Hulk on a dime. There's the big banner for the Rogers musical that we saw during Hawkeye, Hope's Company from Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, and they revealed that it's New Year's Eve. Kingpin references Punisher, a gun-toting vigilante with a skull on his chest. He mentions Spider-Man, a man who dressed in a spider outfit because Spider-Man very active in the city at this point. He mentions Daredevil, a guy who wears devil horns. And we go to White Tiger, who tries to save someone from some muggers, but we find out that it's actually cops that are roughing up some person, and one of the cops trips and falls in front of the train, getting killed.
So what happened to the officer who
tripped?
This is all to set up the whole trial of the White Tiger arc that they're adapting from the comics. The original version of the show was actually doing a much bigger version of this, but they sort of collapsed it and made it a smaller thing during the new version of the show. We also find out that this group of cops that are trying to silence this witness here to what really happened are tied to some group that are using the Punisher logo in their tattoos. This will be a big part of Punisher's arc during the season and what he's doing, going after a bunch of corrupt cops. So the whole thing that happens with White Tiger and the anti-vigilante stuff that's going on in these dirty cops is also connected to the Punisher arc. We get another BB report on Daredevil this time, and then Kingpin remembers his father, who he killed, by the way, saying that Mayor LaGuardia was his hero. Even though he never respected anyone, he kind of respected LaGuardia. Notice Kingpin's knuckles are bloody, so maybe he killed Vanessa's lover already, and we just don't find out till later. One of the other funny details too is it feels like they're using the scene of Kingpin talking about his father, admiring LaGuardia, and him becoming mayor to make it seem like Kingpin now feels like maybe his father would be proud of him for becoming mayor. More of his daddy issues, like Kingpin has a lot of daddy issues. She mentions his wife and the new optics of his office, giving the episode its title, basically giving them the need to get Heather Glenn to be their marriage counselor, to do all this marriage counseling that we see at the end of the episode. Then we see Matt at the police station helping a mother with her daughter who was arrested for drunk driving, and they sort of pick up with the White Tiger plot, and he winds up meeting him, trying to help him out become his lawyer, the same way he met Karen Page during Season 1, Episode 1 of the Netflix series. They really wanted to feel like the same energy too. Hector basically telling him, I don't have money for this. Karen Page basically told him the same kind of stuff. It's the same basic vibe between Karen Page's initial scene being accused of murder and Hector being accused of murder. When Kingpin gets stuck in traffic here with the whole pothole, this whole event also feels like it's set up for later in the series where he gets more and more pissed off that people aren't fixing things as fast as he's saying that they're going to be fixed. Like, why aren't you fixing problems that I promised people that I would fix? Then at Hector's hearing, we meet the Hochberg district attorney that Fisk was talking about meeting earlier. He finds the judge already kind of against them, but then later winds up siding with him. And we find out BB is now using Daniel Blake to try and get an interview with Kingpin. I wonder if she'll find out that he killed her uncle, because she does kind of make a weird face when he admits to knowing Ben Urich. Like, I knew him, he was a good journalist. Right before I strangled the life out of his eyes. Kingpin implies that they're going to use BB for some nefarious purpose, probably just use her to accomplish some goal future of the series. We'll see about that. There's a little joke here with Heather Glenn's new book too. She says, live without fear. Daredevil is the man without fear in the comics, so the joke is she's literally living with the man without fear. All this talk of projected versions of different selves is also a bit of a sly reference to Daredevil and Kingpin hiding behind different personas, their true selves being the actual hero and the Kingpin of crime. This person who tells her that he's not right, he needs some help, asks her to be his counselor, seems like it's Hunter Doohan from the Wednesday series. I think he might be playing the Muse villain himself, which would make sense if the Muse villain thinks that he's disturbed and gets counseling, but continues to be a big problem through the series. Also doesn't bode well for Matt's love interest if the main villain of the season winds up being one of her patients. Usually does not end well for the doctors in those situations. We see Buck clocking her, trying to find out if she's the right counselor for Kingpin and Vanessa, later has her sign papers before the end of the episode, before they actually start their session.
I wonder how it feels for a guy like you to come to a place like this.
Kingpin visits the police funeral to talk to the commissioner who hates him and has it out for him, like knows all about his history as the Kingpin of crime and is doing everything he can to try and take him down. This is basically a challenge to Kingpin to not go full Kingpin on him. Like, are you going to have this dude killed, or are you going to try and find a legit way to get rid of him? When they go to White Tiger's house, they make some more Punisher references. He finds evidence in his room that he's White Tiger and tells Matt about it, who then confronts Hector with it. There's a lot of talk about his mystical amulet and his powers, so basically the idea, like they want to hammer home the idea that he does actually have low-level powers. He also references picking up the slack, helping people because Daredevil isn't around, causing Matt to laugh. How ironic. And it seems like Fisk's compromise here, like there's a couple of jokes about him making the police commissioner compromise by taking nothing that he's asking for, but the compromise, at least on Fisk's part, is that he's not straight up just killing this dude, he's actually going to blackmail him with the knowledge of his secret love child. Kinda does feel like a compromise if you're talking about Kingpin, like normally he would just have somebody assassinated. But the whole idea here is that he's compelling the commissioner to stay, and as a result of that, causing a bunch of police officers who are also threatening to quit with him to also stay. Also noted, he hates Philly cheesesteaks. Somebody order a whole bunch of those and just have them sent to his office just to piss him off. Matt then tries to argue for White Tiger successfully because he is a really good lawyer, so he gets them to not admit all this White Tiger evidence to the actual trial itself. Then they make a Ghostbuster reference, so I guess Ghostbusters now canon to the Marvel Universe, which also took place in New York City. Then he goes back to that nearby church. This is the church that they featured during all the Netflix episodes, like the same one that he kept going back to. And he tells that dirty cop that was involved in White Tiger's fight, finding out that they know where the witness is and they're going to go try and assassinate that person. There's that short scene of Heather Glenn starting the counseling session with Kingpin and Vanessa, and basically the whole idea they want to get across here is that Vanessa feels like she's doing great and she doesn't need Kingpin anymore, so like what's the point? She just feels like she's forced to be here. Instead, Kingpin is the one that's trying to make the marriage work and Vanessa kind of doesn't care about it anymore. Matt then tries to save the witness from the dirty cops, seems like he's successful in that, but then winds up seemingly almost killing these cops themselves too in the fight because they try to kill him first. So he's just trying to defend himself, but he's basically gone back into full Daredevil mode, taking them out. So as you see things escalate episode to episode, both Daredevil and Kingpin are slipping back into their old lifestyles. We will see how long it takes for him to put the Daredevil costume back on and how long it takes for Kingpin to straight up kill some dude. Love the way they end on the credits with him screaming, classic Daredevil style. But there's a bunch of stuff going on during these episodes. I feel like it's a real strong start. We will see how they follow up with it in episode 3 next week. So my video for that will post after they release it. I'll probably do a trailer video for that too, just because there's so much stuff going on, so much to talk about. If there are any big Easter eggs or references that you spotted in the first 2 episodes that I didn't talk about in this video, just write them below in the comments. Side note too, while I was finishing this video, Marvel literally just said that Eldon Henson will return in Season 2 as Foggy Nelson. They didn't say how he's going to return, just that he would return somehow. We will see if that winds up being flashbacks or some other hallucination, or they actually try to bring him back and say that he's still alive. Really big reminder that later this week we're going to get Invincible War on the new Invincible episode. My video for that will post after they release it. Click here for that Avengers Doomsday first look that just dropped, and click here to learn about all the Defenders coming back in all my Daredevil episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.